So just wanted to say hi to everyone. Thank you for coming to this Twitter space. I'm talking to a very interesting project called Genomes DAO, and we have Aldo with us. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. He's the co-founder of Genomes. And we also have Genomes intern with us, who is interning at Genomes, right? So welcome, you guys.
Thanks for having us. Yeah. Just a little clarification. Like all the other intern accounts on crypto Twitter, like Sushi Intern or Delphi Intern or CMS Intern, I'm kind of that role, but for Genomes DAO. So I'm curious, when is Creator DAO going to have their own intern account?
Create, yeah, I think all of us are interns at Creator now. So all of us. So but it's a good idea. We'll bring it up, we'll vote on it and get someone, or maybe not, let's see. I can't speak much for the community, but let's go. Here we go. Aldo, would you like to do a small introduction of yourself? What is, can you tell us what is Genomes, and uh, why did you start this project?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thank you so much for having us. So I'm CEO and co-founder of Genomes DAO. We started with Genomes DAO back in 2018 after I think a conversation that took place that started in 2014 even. So from 2014 to 2018, we did a lot of talking about um, what your DNA is, what the value of your DNA is and of your genes now and in the future, and also how we could protect our DNA so not everyone would just be able to get hold of your data. So the idea of Genomes DAO is that basically we want to empower each and every individual to really unlock the value of their genomic sequence. So another word for your genomic sequence is of your DNA. And for each individual also to remain in full control of their DNA. Now, this might sound weird, and I think for those of you who might not be familiar with the specific sector, you might think, well, I'm already in control, but I assure you that many of you are not, because what the current market tendency or the current players in the market, they basically have a very easy way to get to become the owner of your DNA. And when I say players in the market, I basically refer to direct to consumer genetic companies. You might have heard of 23andMe. You might have heard of Ancestry.com. I think those are the two most notable, but there are many of such companies in the market that have clever ways to get hold of your genomic sequence. Now, what these companies do, and I don't know in the audience whether you've been a client or whether you've worked with these companies or used their product, but what they currently do is they sell you a kit for around $150 in the Christmas sale. You get that kit at home. You put saliva in a tube and send it back to 23andMe. They take it to a laboratory, they sequence your genome, and in exchange for you giving all of your information, you receive a report on your ancestry. So it's a gimmicky report that tells you, oh, very interesting, you have ancestors from Ireland or from a specific other continent, and it basically feeds your genetic curiosity. What they don't tell you is that these companies at the same time are the official owner of your data, and that by you paying them $150 and giving your data, They are now are fully entitled to cross-sell your data to the pharmaceutical industry, to research companies, and to whoever basically to whoever makes the highest bid. And we feel that that is a very dangerous route to go with, because these are companies in the Web 2.0 sphere. So these are database products based on trust. And even though some of these companies might have the original intention not to sell your data to kind of the wrong partner, we all know that once they are taken over by another company, which happens very often, that basically relationship or that trust no longer applies. And so we live in an era whereby your DNA can be up for grabs if you are not careful. And once it's up for grabs, it can be used by those in a way not beneficial for you. And I'm not telling you any conspiracy theories, or I'm really not trying to scare anyone, but insurance companies will, on the basis of your genomic data, be able to no longer provide you with a specific policy. Employers will be able to look at your genomic data, compare it with other candidates, and basically make the decision to not give you that specific job because you are more susceptible for heart disease in 10 years' time. For instance, you might, on the basis of your genomic sequence, get deported because they see you are, you're not of the origin you're supposed to be, and so on and so forth. All of these cases have already happened. So I'm not talking about any kind of big brothery, scary thing that is going to happen in the future. These are really things that are happening to date. So what we try to do is we are basically trying to be a decentralized version of a tool like 23andMe, whereby we basically completely embrace scientific progress and basically also want to do research and also want to give you the reports and basically also feed your genetic curiosity, but do it with you remaining the full autonomous owner of your data, meaning that we would sequence your genome and give it back to you in a very secure vault. Once it is in the vault, you are the sole person who can basically access your genomic data. And what we can do once it's in our infrastructure is we can work with these pharmaceutical companies and research companies who can then broker your, who can then query your data. So we would broker the data to you, but only if we have your explicit permission. And once that is done, you would also be rewarded for the querying, which is currently not the case. And this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll be quiet. Because currently these direct-to-consumer genetic companies, they are making hundreds of millions. So it's not $150 for selling your, for the kit that you've paid that they get rich of. No, they get rich of cross-selling that data. And those deals, they are, one example is a deal between 23andMe and GlaxoSmithKline for $300 million. Right? So these are hundreds of millions of dollars that these companies are making on the back of data that you have unknowingly waved to them. I'm going to pause here because I can imagine there are some questions, or that intern wants to say left and right, maybe make some additional comments.
Before intern would like to add on, I would like to sum up what you just said is I did not know a few things what you just said. So basically genome sequencing, or testing your DNA, is nothing new. 23andMe and this ancestry.com has been doing it, but what we don't understand is basically we get when we give our DNA to these companies, we get a result which shows that, oh, I'm 16% Irish, 22% Moroccan, 50% Indian or something like that. And that's just like a gimmick play which makes someone like me happy, because I'm quite happy. But the real thing is, what these guys are doing is they're asking you to pay $100, 150, $200, but they are what you're doing is you're giving away your rights to your data to these companies, and these companies not only are making $200 from, like, getting my DNA, but they also selling it across the board, right? Like, to who, I don't know, maybe the highest bidder, whoever is trying to pay, which is quite scary. And till the time, honestly, like, like how Facebook just shares my data, and like I don't really care. But like, you mentioned a point which got me thinking that, like, does this really happen, right? Like, people see your DNA, and one, you could be deported. Two, like, you could be denied a job. Three, like, you could have higher insurance premiums, or you could not get insurance at all. So, like, all of that seems like, it has real life consequences to, like, just me just doing a simple test. And for fun, like, I just booked a Christmas holiday test kit for, I don't know, my family. And all of this has consequences which we never really think of, which is very scary. And like, we don't know that, like, if we have consented to this like data sharing or not. So yeah, I mean, that was quite eye opening, right? And I think what you're trying to do is you're taking this model of um DNA testing, or do you call it DNA sequencing? And putting it onto Web3, where people control, like, users who are doing these tests control their uh, data. And you, like, if you're partnering with someone, the person has to give permission to use that data. And if someone is using it, the correct me if I'm wrong, the user gets rewarded in some or the other way, right? Like, this is the basic concept.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, intern, you go.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And just to clarify and maybe distill it in another way, in the U.S., everyone is given something called a social security number, and that number you're not supposed to share with anyone, because that is extremely important. That's how people verify you getting a mortgage, you opening a bank account, you getting a um, you putting a deposit on a car, things like that. It's extremely important. So imagine if you would go, there was a service that said, hey, how about you give us your social security number? We'll charge you $100 for it. And then after that, we'll go and then we will sell that to hackers and then we'll make money on both ends. So it's kind of like that, but for your DNA in a more extreme case where you're paying something like a 23andMe or Ancestry. They're giving you a cute little, email saying, oh, you're Irish. You probably already knew you're Irish, but they're you're paying them to tell you something, and then they go and sell your DNA for much more money. And just as Aldo alluded to, the scale of this, um, Blackstone is one of the biggest private equity companies in the world. I think they have about $300 billion in assets under management, and they took a majority stake in 20 or Ancestry.com, right, for $4.7 billion. And I can promise you, all the people on Wall Street, they don't care, where your grandfather's from, things like that. They care, and they took that majority stake because that data is extremely valuable. It's valuable to maybe in some cases governments, which is a scary thing. It's valuable to researchers and it's valuable to pharmaceutical organizations. And the one scary thing is once you give that saliva to Ancestry or 23andMe, they'll give you your cute little report, but you have no idea what happens after that. That's the first thing. And then two, if they're making hundreds of millions of dollars off your DNA, don't you think it's kind of a little, shouldn't it be like logical or fair that you're compensating the people who gave you the DNA? right? Like if you're not, that's kind of, I don't know, unethical, exploitative. So that's kind of the whole premise of the Genomes DAO project, right? So what we would do is we would do, yeah, Aldo, do you want to add something?
No, so this is kind of in previous interviews, people always mention this, and I think it's always a very good recommendation. I don't know who among you have read the book The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and this is a book. This is not about genomic data, but these are of something that is used a lot in healthcare and in the research sector, which are cancer cells. So Henrietta Lacks was a poor lady, I believe. She died already in the 50s, living in Baltimore. And Johns Hopkins basically saw that her cells were perpetually reproducing themselves. And they never told her, nor did they ever tell the family, that she had such incredible cells. Now, these cells, also known as HeLa cells, are being used today to find cures for cancer. Many discoveries have been done on the basis of these HeLa cells. And I think, 15 years ago or so, the family even found out that, their grandmother's cells were used for this purpose. This is an entire discussion, because legally, Johns Hopkins didn't do anything wrong, because they took the tissue, they took the cells, and that made them the owner. So they legally didn't need to tell the family or the patient even that their cells has such a major effect. But I think many of us feel, from a moral aspect, that's wrong, right? And this is basically a version, the genomic version of that. So people, once you legally waive your data to a direct-to-consumer genetic company, legally they are the owner of that data, and they can do whatever they want with it. And there's an enormous danger there, because we're only at the very tip of the iceberg of what your data can do, right? Of what you can read into your genomic data. This is a very quickly evolving research field, and many things are very quickly happening in this field. So we need to be conscious of it, and we need to be very careful of where we put the data and to whom we give the data. Sorry, just going to stop there.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, if you go on Thermo Fisher Scientific right now, if you wanted to get one, I guess, carton of HeLa cells, it's $600. But I can promise you, I mean, someone please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 100% sure Henrietta Lacks's family is not getting compensated for that. And that's kind of the idea of ownership in Web3, right? And we'll go into that a little bit when we kind of talk about the DeFi aspect of the project. But yeah, that's the TLDR. So then, so what makes us kind of different is that for us, you get your genome sequencing kit, and then we're working with one of the biggest and most privacy-focused sequencing providers, Nebula Genomics, and they're the ones who are sequencing the vaults on or sequencing the DNA on our behalf, and then we have the ability to conduct audits on them, third-party audits on them, to make sure that they are only just sequencing the data and then not keeping it for themselves, and then after that, they're destroying the biological samples, right? So once you have your DNA sequence, that would be uploaded into one of these things called an AMD SEV vault, and this vault is extremely similar to like a MetaMask or a Ledger. Meaning that, oh, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we
Yeah.
can.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
we can.
sorry.
No
And they're very similar to a MetaMask or Ledger, meaning that the only person who can open this vault is the person with the 12-word seed phrase. So if you've ever bought an NFT or you have a Ledger, you lose that seed phrase, you're done. Like, it's game over, right? So you have to keep that seed phrase extremely safe, and you need to know it if you need to re-put in your seed phrase to another Ledger or MetaMask. And the same deal here. You get your genome sequence from one of our kits. You'll activate your vault first, then you get the genome sequence. We put it into the vault. If you lose that seed phrase, we can't help you. Like, you own that data, you own that genome, that 100 gig file, right? That's yeah, that's the whole self-custody, self-ownership of your genome. And then what happens is, from there, you can do one of two things. You can query yourself, right? So say I want to run like an ancestry test on my genome. You can do that. You can run that now on the platform. You can also run a rare disease test to see like if you are susceptible to, or if your genome is flagging certain rare disease you might have the genes for. And then obviously as time goes on, we want to add more tests to the platform. Like for example, maybe do you have the genes for long COVID? Are you more susceptible to this niche, this rare Alzheimer's variant? Or are you, is your, for medical marijuana, is your genome more compatible with like sativa or indica strains, things like that, right? And then the other aspect of that is that when you want to monetize your genome, right, you want to curate this valuable information to researchers or third parties or pharma, then they would send a query to the vault, and then the query, so if it's like we want to run, so say Pfizer's like, we want to run a study on African American males age 50 to 60 with diabetes, and we want to send queries to individuals that fit that demographic, and we want to ask them, do you have this specific gene? So what would happen is that query goes into the vault, and then the raw data isn't exposed, but the answer to the query is executed. So it'd be like a yes or no, and then that answer would come out of the vault. And a lot of people ask, oh, are you putting genomes on the blockchain? Let's put genomes on the blockchain. No, that's actually not what we're doing. That's if you'd put genomes on the blockchain, that'd be a really stupid idea for two reasons. One 100 gig genome file would be about 64 ETH to host it on Ethereum, the Ethereum blockchain. Two, if you have someone's genome on the blockchain, you can see everything about it. That defeats the whole purpose of owning your data, right? So we're not putting genomes on the blockchain. What we're doing with the blockchain is that every time a vault is queried, right, that answer comes in or goes out and you get paid for that, that is what is immutably stored on the blockchain. And that's why, because for 23andMe and Ancestry, when they sell off your data, you don't know who's using it and for what, and you're not getting compensated. But what we're doing differently here is that every time your data is being accessed by another third party or pharma or whoever, that is being stored on the blockchain in perpetuity forever. There, you can't change that. And then you're also seeing how much you're getting paid for that query. So for example, in the previous example, if they're giving African American males age 50 to 60 who have diabetes $100 per query, that is showed on the blockchain and no one can dispute that. So I'll stop there if we have any questions, but that's kind of how the platform works.
That's super cool. B, I would like you, if you can, like, sum up what the Genomes intern said, like in your own words, and then, like, you can take it ahead.
Okay. So from my understanding, instead of giving up our control to giving up our control of our own data, what Genomes is doing is enabling us to not only own our own data, have control over it, but also share profit that could come from maybe sharing some of our data with the pharmaceutical companies. I do have a question about this though. So say
Sure.
Hey, one second. Sorry for cut. Before you ask the question, I just want like, show of hands. Like, if you guys are following this conversation, if you're enjoying, then please retweet and talk about this space, so more of your people, like more of your friends can hear. And I know few people are requesting to ask questions. Just give us 5-10 more minutes, 5 minutes more, and then we can start taking speakers, right? Like, so let's just wait on getting more people on. So B, go on.
Okay, so I can ask my question now.
Yep. All yours.
Sure.
Oh, okay. So say I respond to a query, right? And so they have my data. And after they finish using my data, what do they do with the data? Where does it go?
Oh, okay, so I'm
So
really
the
glad you asked that. So the
okay.
way it worked, and I should have clarified this before, a lot of people think, oh, okay, once my genome sequence and I just accept that my data is being used, right? Then it's gone forever. Someone has it. That's actually not the case. And that's why what we're doing is very special because we have it in a repeat consent protocol. So what that means is that B, if you're someone is querying your genome, they'd only query a tiny part of your genome. It's not like you'll say, hi, I'm B, and I'm going to give my whole genome away to one entity. No, it's only a tiny part of your genome gets queried. And then what they ask is they're not looking for the raw genomic information. They're looking for the answer to that query. So, for example,
Mm.
if it's like, does B have the gene for long COVID? It would be a yes or no. It wouldn't be B has this genetic, like ATCGG, whatever, the actual genomic code. And then the other thing too is that because it's a repeat consent protocol, if another research organization came and asked to query that same tiny part of your genome, they could ask the same thing, right? But
Mm.
the whole point here is that once someone queries your data once, it's not like they have that data and they can sell it off to anyone else. It's not like, say, we have a pie and someone takes a small part of the pie and that part of the pie is gone forever. No, it's that that data still stays with you. And if someone wants to ask that same question later on down the road, they can. And then you can still make money from that same question. It's not like it's writing
Mm.
off the whole genome at once.
Your data never leaves the vault, essentially, right? So it's not that any of your data is going to be exposed. It will never leave the vault, and the queries take place in the vault as well. Once the query takes place, the research organizations or pharmaceutical companies, they get the result to the query. So that's basically what we're looking at.
And I would also assume that this data is never connected privately to my specific set of data. I don't know if you know what I mean, because I know my identity is not revealed to the public forever, but is this set of data connected to my bigger set of data? I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Um, so
What do you mean by that?
I think I got the question. I will try to explain that if that's okay. So will my data, which I've sequenced through you, be like tagged as, oh, it's Dheeraj's data, or it's B data, it's B's data, or something like that, right? Like, or this just lives as a DNA what do you say, like a thing on its own, right, without assigning any kind of name to it.
If I can use an analogy, like if you go on Etherscan, you can check a transaction that belongs to a wallet, but you can never know who the true identity of this wallet, the owner of this wallet is.
Okay, so I think I understand what you're saying, and Aldo, please add. Mark is more on the technical side, so unfortunately he's not here right now, but he could give a better answer to the question. But from my understanding, is that what it would look like is that this entity, so say you have your vault and we've incorporated the paying with the gene token, right? It would say that this address was paid like $100 in gene, and it would show a hash for the query, if that makes sense. So if you somehow like linked your ENS, so it's not like if you linked your ENS um, to the vault, then I think you could have it that way. But there's other ways where you don't have it, and it like we said before, it's not like if your ENS is linked, it's not like it would say, oh, so and so has this comorbidities. It would just say like, oh, this person with this ENS has a Genomes DAO vault, and they were compensated for accepting this query. But you wouldn't know what the query is, if that makes sense.
Okay, okay. That's
Does
pretty
that
Interesting.
hopefully
interesting.
answer your question? Aldo, maybe do you want to add anything on that front?
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking multiple transaction here. So because I heard you like there's payment that takes place for the query. So a pharmaceutical company compensating you for a query that they've did, which is then with kind of the payment address. But then there's also the survey results and the fact that they've queried your data for that specific purpose. Those, the data is not stored in the same place and is done completely securely. So you have your, sorry, my 2-year-old is leaving up. So basically
It's
you have, yeah, sorry. So you have your account, your dashboard, and in that dashboard, which is only accessible via your seed phrase and whatever, you could see kind of when it is queried, but that is information only available for your eyes and for you. That is not information that other people could grab or could take a look at. So you very well know for what your data has been used, if that makes sense. No one else is known, so it's not that that's like publicly available for all people to see, if that makes sense. Me.
Well, the reason why I was asking the question is because if I respond to a lot of queries and I was just thinking somehow my data could be linked together and in some ways like people can figure out, okay, I'm female, I may have these like certain traits, but sounds like that's not the case.
Yeah, so I think a few things on that front. I think one, that we wanted to, as we mentioned before, right, the whole purpose of this project is privacy, right? And if we would do anything that would compromise the privacy, that'd be shooting ourselves in the foot. So one example is that we're working with some some bioinformaticians at the Turing Institute. Mark knows more about this, but like, for example, how much can we allow someone to know on one query, right? How much of like a DNA read or something, how many SNPs, right? Or sorry, not SNPs, let's not use that word. How much of the DNA can we allow someone to have in one query? Because we don't want someone to build up a profile on someone else, right? So that's kind of like to address what you're saying. But basically, the way these vaults work is that the vault is like, think of it like they're just independent from everything, right? And then all the information about yourself is in that vault. And then the only thing that comes into the vault are just specific queries based on the surveys you filled out, right? And you can choose to fill out the surveys or you can choose not to. But that's kind of how we're parsing the data, and we would know, okay, these were the ones we'd want to send queries to because they fit this demographic, or these are the ones you'd not want to send it to. But that wouldn't be public, if that makes sense. It would have been nice to have Mark here because he has a much better understanding of the tech stack than me.
Looks like we have someone from the audience who has a question.
Yeah, hi. Hi guys. Thanks for hosting the space.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
I was wondering about the query protocol. Like, is that up and running already?
Yeah. So Aldo, do you want to talk on that front? So yeah, the tech stack is built. The platform is live. There's a few things going. Some of the internal Genomes DAO people are kind of working through the UI on the platform side just to make sure it looks good when we have a bunch of people post NFT sale, right? After the 12 to 14 weeks it takes to get your genome sequence, we just want to make sure it looks good on that front. But Aldo, maybe you want to talk about the work we've done with like AMD and then things like that, the person that we just hired.
Sure. So after doing a successful sale on sushi via Miso, we've grown the team from 10 to 17 people. We're now working with Web 3.0 developers. We're working with DeFi developers, but also with bioinformaticians. and developers who can basically help us with the further querying of the data. So in answer to your question, you are already able to query the data, and we are already able to generate reports ourselves. So reports that we are able to generate are on the level of rare diseases as well as of ancestry, just much like that the 23andMe and Ancestry.coms of this world are offering, because we basically want to demonstrate that we can do the same, if not better, what they are doing, just in a decentralized way. And as we grow, we want to be able to do further querying, not only kind of working with other exciting tech partners who want to query the data that we host in our decentralized database, but also continue to develop reports ourselves, so that everyone can continuously ask questions about themselves should you want to, so that the data doesn't remain static in a vault, but that if you want to, you could really work with the data to get a better understanding of who you are genetically.
And did you guys build the? So I'm interested in it. I'm working for a company that's doing unlockable content behind NFTs, and we are building this rental protocol, which I just found similarities with your product in the sense that you're kind of renting out access to the genome. Do you know if this is a protocol that you built yourself, or if it is?
So the protocol of querying the data we've built ourselves. So we have a team who really specializes in working with the data that is encrypted, and to make sure that you very precisely are able to query, the specific base pairs at hand, for instance. So that is already up and running. However, that changes also as the query changes and as the query gets more complex. So, again, I'm not sure whether there's one protocol that we should be talking about, or whether there should be multiple. It might well be that there are going to be multiple protocols in the future to get the right results, right? So go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think he's asking more on the front of you guys working with AMD and Consensus.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to know? Sorry. So
I'm maybe more on the side of the part that goes on the blockchain, basically.
Can I try to simplify the question, right? Ragi, are you asking basically, are you token gating or like the data? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Because that's the platform you're building, Ragi?
Yeah. So as I read your dumbed down version that I found on Discord, so I know you're not token gating it.
No.
Go on, Aldo.
No, so I mean, if the answer is more simple. I'm sorry, I was mixing up kind of how you query the actual data versus how the entire process is set up. So with regards to, as Intern said, none of the data is hosted on the blockchain. The data is hosted in these AMD SEV-ES vaults, and you are able to query the data. What we do with the blockchain is we ensure with the blockchain that we will continuously work with one version of the truth. So it's basically the audit trail that we keep track of on the blockchain.
And that's the part I'm interested in. Like if that's something you built out as well.
Yeah. So we have built something out so that we can keep track of that report. Now, naturally, neither Intern nor I are the real techies here, but we do have something for that in place. Maybe if you want to, if you're already in the Discord, then let's get in touch, and if we can provide you with some more details on that specific.
Yeah, why don't we? So we have our DAO meetings every Thursday at 12:30 p.m., 5:30 GMT. So if you want, you should come to the next DAO meeting. Mark's off this week, but the one after that, and then you can throw some of the more technical questions at him, because he would know more, he has a much better understanding of the tech stack than both Aldo and I.
Awesome. So just one more thing. basically, right, like before we move on to next question, like I just wanted to address on what you guys are doing with the NFTs, right? Like, because that's what people want to hear, and like even I'm curious. So I will try to f- say what I understood is basically, you're using NFTs as a medium to, like, get people started to use these kits which you are giving, right? Like these sequencing kits. So like I can purchase uh, genomes NFT, which are actually something called genetic cats. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. They're like 5,000 generative cats which you can buy, and these NFT entitles you to what do you say? Get a sequencing done of your genome, and once that is done, you also get a art created out of your DNA, right? Like this is quite interesting what you have, like, thought about. So can you tell me a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so the way it would work is that we wanted to anyone who's been following Genomes DAO knows that we once we hit this 10,000 genomes in vaults mark, that's when the data set is large enough that large pharmaceutical companies or research organizations would want to start querying the data. If you went to someone and said, "Hey, I have 5 genomes, whole genome sequences, and then you can use this for research," they'd say, "Oh, that's cool, but that's not enough. Like we need more to reach any sort of clinical significance for doing a GWAS study or anything like that, right? So that's why we need a large amount of genomes in these vaults." Now, what we thought of was that, hey, why don't we attach NFTs and genomes, right? So we were going to do, okay, when you get this NFT, and then that'll let you redeem a whole genome sequencing kit from our website. But then, kind of the cherry on top that we're adding is that, wait, if your genome is already in the vault, why don't we take a small part of certain parts of your genome or a certain segment of your genome and then generate a hash from that, and then that hash would be inputted into some sort of generative art algorithm that could create an NFT on the blockchain. So by doing that, we kind of have a monopoly where we're the only entity that can safely and securely make generative art from someone's genome. And then if you think of it from that standpoint, um, it's kind of like immortalizing yourself on the blockchain, which is really cool. And then a lot of people ask, okay, well, what is the secondary value of these things? And then do you want to sell it? Do you not want to sell it? Well, if you are using your own DNA to create an NFT that's on, a decentralized blockchain like Ethereum, not like one of the other ones that are more centralized, um, that's you marking your spot on like your place in the universe for like ever. There's something really cool about that. And then the other thing too, if there's an NFT quite literally made from your genetic blueprint, would you ever want to sell it? It's like if someone gave you like an engraved necklace, like your grandfather gave you an engraved necklace, and it's made of gold or something. Yeah, the gold has value, but would you want to sell something that's has such sentimental value, right? So that's where I think is really cool, and no one else can do what we're doing in that way because they don't have that secure tech stack we built. So I think that's where things get really interesting. But as mentioned before, the workflow is that you get the cat NFT. The cat NFT, it's cool. Hopefully, like cats and everything. You redeem that from our website for one of the whole genome sequencing kits. Then it takes about 12 to 14 weeks to get your whole genome sequence from one of our providers. And once you have that done and your genome is in the vault, that's when we would do like a private mint or a free mint of the generative NFT. And then obviously, like that's a little bit down the road. We still have to commission the artist. We still have to decide all those things. But that's kind of the cherry on top. And I think that's the really cool thing. And hopefully, I don't think a lot of people would want to sell that because I think it's pretty cool. So
my understanding is that each NFT entitles the user to have a sequencing kit. And then after that, the NFT sort of just is a souvenir. It would not have other utilities. Is my understanding correct?
So the genetic cats NFT, the cat pictures that we're hopefully going to push out a lot over the next couple days, that's just the NFT of the cat. But when you mint that, you would take that to the EtherCards platform, and then on the EtherCards platform, you would redeem the trait, which gives you a genome sequencing kit. So you take that code and then put that in our website, genomes.io. From there, you can put in your information for where we send the kit. You can get it sent to a PO box or somewhere else, your workplace, if you don't want to use your real address. But we send you the kit, and then you put in your saliva sample in there. You send the kit back to the address that we put in the box, right? And then your genome gets sequenced. And then that takes 12 to 14 weeks. Once your genome is sequenced, as kind of the cherry on top, we're going to give you a generative NFT that is based on queries from your genome. So say we'll look at like this certain part of your genome, and then from the results of that part of your genome, we'll create a hash from that, and then that hash will go into a generative art algorithm, and that will create some interesting artwork. So in a way, it's kind of like using your genetics to be put on the blockchain.
So it's not that your NFT won't have utility. You will build up on it, but it's kind of a combination of an interpretation of your genomic data and the genetic cat, right? So it's just for us it is a lot more depth than a normal NFT, because there's literally a part of you in there, because it has interpreted. So and I think also, full disclosure here, it's not that actual genetic data is in there. It's an interpretation. It's an art interpretation of your genetic data that is combined with the genetic cat, right? That's what we're looking for. And our interpretation, as intern said, is of course that we hope that people would cherish this, and that they say, wow, this is my place on the blockchain, really an NFT that is me and can only be me because it's interpreted with my data. But I'm sure people will find a way to also have a play on the secondary market, but that's not why we put it out there, right? Our philosophy is, if it's built on this uniqueness, it's built on safeguarding and managing the data, having that privacy, but still being able to express yourself through such an NFT and accumulating value in the same way. That's why we introduced this NFT, and we feel we're very original, kind of, in doing that, or we hope we are original at least.
And the other thing too is that if you tried to like open up someone's entire genome and then just take that and create art from that, that's a big privacy risk, right? There's a reason why this data needs to be private. And then even when minting this generative art NFT, we have to make sure that we're not compromising anyone's privacy. Yes, it's really cool what we're doing, but we need to make sure that we don't, defeat the whole purpose of like the DAO and the project. And because of that, we're the only ones that have the infrastructure to do something like this in a safe way. You can do it in an unsafe way and then, expose a bunch of people's genomes and stuff and dox a bunch of people, but that'd be really bad and really stupid.
So what is the cost of this NFT or the sequencing kit that comes with it?
Yeah, so it's going to be dependent. It's going to be an ETH. We're going to mint the cat NFTs on mainnet, but it should be $500 or less. So asterisk, the most it would be is $500, excluding the Ethereum gas fees, but hopefully we can bring that cost down a little bit less. And it'll also depend on the price of ETH. So I think when we listed it out, we were saying it would be like 0.1 ETH, right? But that was when ETH was like 4,800. So now it'll probably be a little bit more. But depending on the price of ETH on February 28th, we'll just go on that. But Aldo, if you want to add anything on that front.
No, so we are, yeah, it depends on where we are on February 28th. And I think the best indication is what intern just said. So, and as soon as we have it concrete, we will of course let you know what the exact price will be. But ballpark, it's indeed around $500 or less if we can.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
it's more based on USD value. Go ahead, Dee.
Yeah. So I'd like to open up the floor for people to ask questions. We have some time left. I think we can go with Ashutosh and Eshu. You can ask first, and then PVM. Why don't you go ahead? And like, if you guys want to ask any questions, you can request. You can send me a DM. I'm happy to take the questions up.
Sure. Thanks, Dheeraj. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Aldo, for doing this. So my question was regarding earlier you mentioned that how if you're giving the DNA samples to Ancestry.com, they give you a fancy report, and and they even they sell your DNA data to pharmacies, pharmaceutical companies, and insurance companies, and misuse that data basically. So in the same analogy, in that same context of data. Europe or European Union in that say has this data protection law called GDPR, where the GDPR governs the way in which you can use, process, and store personal data, and any company or organization that is in European Union or is monitoring EU citizens implies this law and they have to follow this law, and there are very strict laws upon data. Do you think something like similar can become in the field of genome sequencing or your genes or your DNA or something like that? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and I mean, I think the answer to this is layered because yes, not only in Europe, because I'm very familiar with GDPR. We built technology ventures before, so Mark as well as myself, and you were dealing a lot in the Web 2.0 space, where we have a kind of a Web 2.0 database, and we're dealing a lot with kind of the privacy of data and how that should be maintained and managed, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But as the goalposts shift in technology and how people engage with technology, litigation and lawmakers are always going to be behind what technology can do and how it operates. Right? In previous conversations I said that direct to consumer genetic companies, why have they made such waves? Why do they have in the millions of exomes? So that's like genomic sequences. Why do they have in the millions of that available? If so many people are aware of that their privacy is being violated on such a level. You could argue that they aren't aware, which I think is safe to say. But another argument you can bring in here is because they're basically the only way that we are knowledgeable of sequencing your data. There hasn't been another player in the market that says, hey, this is actually not the way to do it. We're actually not being respectful here of the privacy of our users, right? And this is also where Web 3.0 is so revolutionary to my idea, because it really is based on the fact that we are working by default with trustless systems. We are working with systems that basically say, if you have no business using my data, then don't use my data, and I can lock all doors and windows, so you're literally not able to do so, right? So and that is basically to be ahead of any laws or any kind of stipulations or any new things that'll come up in the European Union or in California for that matter, because that was going to be a next example that I wanted to mention, that in California as well, they have revisited already their laws on how genetic data can be applied and how it can be used, right? So you see that people are waking up to this and are becoming more conscious and more aware. However, it's not really being ahead of the curve. It's again going to be something after the fact. Already now, millions of people have given their data to 23andMe and Ancestry.com, and sadly, their data are being used for the purposes that we previously mentioned. And there's nothing anymore that people can do about it, right? So how do we stay ahead of that, and how do we protect ourselves in the right way? And we would like to argue that the way we are suggesting with Genomes DAO is the way to go.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, I think a lot of people say, okay, well, what are the implications of like data privacy for this project? It's like, man, like you're the only person who has access to your genome. Like we don't even have access to it, right? If in some crazy world, like say some Blackstone bought all the GNOME governance tokens and it's like, oh, give us all the data. It's like, no, we don't have the data because it's in everyone's vault and everyone has their own private 12-word, they have their own private key with the 12 words. Like we don't have access to that. So I can't think of a more like, if there's a spectrum of privacy, like this is like the extreme end where no, the only person who has access to the data is you. And I think going forward, right, you're gonna, you can't fit the technology is not there to fit a 100 gig file on like of your genome on your phone and interface that like with a Ledger wallet. If you look at like a Ledger or a MetaMask, like a Ledger can only hold, I think it's like 100 kilobytes, right? So there's no way the technology is there yet for that. But this is really the next best thing, where you have your genome in an encrypted virtual vault that has a private key. So
That answers my question. Thank you, guys.
thank you for the question.
Awesome. Guys, if you have any questions, please request. If not, you can DM me. PVM, if you want to say something.
Yeah. So basically, almost the same thing about GDPR, because I know they're based in England, in London, and I live in England, so here they're not so open to crypto yet. So what's Aldo's view about regulations and things in the UK regarding NFTs and crypto?
Well, I mean, to me, again, I would say that lawmakers and technology, these are two completely different worlds, right? What's happening in the crypto space, what's happening in the Web 3.0 space is so much further advanced than where lawmakers are. And yes, eventually these worlds come together and they become, slightly more mainstream and kind of, all those things. You've pointed out correctly, we are based in the United Kingdom. We are registered as a limited in the United Kingdom. That's absolutely no secret. We also deal with national genomic sequencing initiatives, universities, big hospitals and whatever, as a very transparent, accountable Web 2.0 player, right? Just as a normal company, if you will, and not as with our anonymous avatar or whatever, kind of having these conversations, because we wouldn't go anywhere with these conversations because people are not going to trust us. So we really like to play in the crossroads, looking at how data should be used, looking at the fact that we comply with all rules that are there, including GDPR, but there are also loads of kind of specifications on how to deal with specific data, ISO standards, if you will, that we are looking to comply with, depending on the partner we are playing with, we are working with, and we are dealing with. Having said all of that, it doesn't exclude what we are doing here on an NFT level, right? We basically see that as kind of another universe almost, whereby we're talking to people who are looking to revolutionize the way that data is being used. And we like the way how it can be used. So as we pointed out earlier, it's not only about maintaining your privacy and giving you the autonomous power to do whatever with your data that you want to do, which is basically what GDPR is meant for, but also for you to make some additional income, if you will. So really. Not only having the transparency of what people are doing with your data, which you currently do not have at all, but having an entire log of where your data is being used, and if there's a commercial advantage, that you're also compensated for that purpose. I wanted to one more thing, because I don't want to kind of put too much value on, when you say GDPR or when you say kind of litigation in all these states and whatever, to kind of that we then think everything is done and dusted and then we are protected. And one very notable example was recently kind of uncovered by, I believe it was the Sunday Times, which is a very big newspaper in the United Kingdom, for those of you who join us from the United Kingdom, whereby a preferred COVID testing partner of the government, so someone who had been vetted to do PCR tests for the government, was about to cross-sell basically all the samples that they had collected so they could be sequenced for genomic data. So this was a deal that was going on by a company that was really contracted by the government to do so. Now, from the outlook, they're compliant with everything, right? So compliance doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing the ethical and moral right thing, right? This is incorrect. If you take a PCR test, that data should not be used for any other purposes. You don't want to kind of not get an insurance policy because you took a PCR test that the government told you to get at some point, right? So if you go by, if you're doing it by the book, if you're doing it under GDPR or whatever more, then I'm sure you could argue with a lawyer that they're doing the correct thing, but they're not doing the correct thing morally, right? So I'm happy that this was uncovered, and I'm happy they were condemned for their actions. But I also think it's very scary that they were so close to cutting that deal.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it looks like we have another question from NFT Gene.
Yeah, I had a question about the generative artwork. Do you think it would be possible to have similar genomes end up with similar artwork, or do you think the privacy requirements preclude that?
So I think that's the interesting thing where, like I said before, right, that's going to come a little bit later. But from that hash, I think if we put in enough genes that we query at the same time, you can have a very unique hash. So if we sell, 10,000 of these NFTs, then we'd have 10,000 different hashes. I think it wouldn't be as fun if everyone had something similar, right? I think if we have it so that every hash generates something completely different, I think that'd be a lot cooler. So, and I think that's possible with the tech stack and everything. We just have to get to that point. I know right now we have the devs working on allowing Gene being paid, right? As soon as you accept a query, getting the Gene paid and having that interface working on the platform. But yeah.
NFT Gene, speak up. What is it you do? You have a very interesting name.
Oh, well, I didn't come here to shill, but we're doing artwork for each human gene, basically, as an NFT.
That's
so
awesome.
we could let's talk. I mean, we have a Discord and we're looking for artists and whatever further down, but it's always interesting to know of each other. And welcome to the conversation.
Yeah, I'd love to talk.
Awesome. This is great, right? Like, this is how collabs happen.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to add in at the very end, I think a big focus, at least for me in the Genomes DAO, is thinking about how we can work and fund public goods, right? And we actually spoke to someone yesterday working on an initiative to try to get genome sequencing kits to a certain demographic of individuals in South America, which are very susceptible to this gene, this Alzheimer's gene, which is, it's almost like a cancer diagnosis. Once you find out you have it, you have only about a few years to live, right? And then if you would know in advance, are you a carrier for this gene? Are you not? Do I have this gene? We spoke to someone yesterday, and one thing that person brought up is that for some parts of the world, $500 is cost prohibitive to get their genome sequenced. But if you would have public goods or nonprofits donate to allow individuals to get their genome sequenced, you can have a really interesting flow of events. And this is the one last thing I wanted to end on, the whole Web3 ownership aspect. So say we did raise enough money to give 50 kits to individuals in underdeveloped parts of the world the ability to sequence their genome, right? They would get their genome sequence, and then if they choose to accept every query, right, they would get paid in gene. So they say they accept like 5 queries or like 10 queries or something, and each query is $50. Then they would end up with $500 worth of gene. But with DeFi, what you can do is you can swap that gene for ETH and then become a liquidity provider, and then use those LP tokens to stake them to earn Gnome. And then for Gnome, you start owning part of the actual protocol. So you can go from having someone with $0 but being gifted a genome sequencing kit and accepting queries to actually owning part of a protocol. If someone is kind enough to, donate these kits for public goods. And I think that's the whole ethos of Web3, where you can start from nothing and then you can move towards ownership. And that's what I think a lot of NFT projects, a lot of protocols, a lot of focus should be on that. It looks like we have someone requesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that's really great, right? I want to ask, I want to double down on that take. So just tell me, how can one, let's say, just by minting your NFT, or gets to become part of your protocol and becomes part of your growth, right? Like, because this is what it is, right? Like, if I went to 23andMe when they were new, they went on to raise billions, or I don't know how many ever dollars, but I did not get, right? Like, but you're saying now, if I buy your NFT or I buy your tokens or anything like that, I get to be part of your success story. And how?
Yeah, so here's how it would work. So say that we gifted an individual who would not be able to afford the $500 NFT, the Genetic Cats NFT. Say that was gifted to you, right? So you would take that NFT and then you would go to the EtherCards platform. You would redeem your kit. You'd get your kit sent to you. You'd get your genome sequenced. And then once your genome is sequenced, hopefully we're at the threshold, 10,000 plus, that we would start having outside third parties start querying our vaults, right? So say you're like, you know what, I want to accept every single query I get, right? So one query is for $100, the next one's $50, the next one's for $100, whatever. And then say you end up with like $400 worth of gene tokens from just purely accepting queries, right? What you can do is on SushiSwap or any other DEX that we'll use in the future, you can swap those gene tokens to swap them for ETH, some of them for ETH in a 50-50 ratio, right? So you can have LP tokens. So you say swap, okay, so you have $400 worth of gene, you would swap half of that for ETH, and then you'd have $200 worth of ETH and $200 worth of gene. Now you can take those tokens and put them in the sushi or the gene/ETH liquidity pool, and then you'd get liquidity LP tokens, right? So you're a liquidity provider now, and then we're on Polygon, so the fees are nothing. And then you would take those LP tokens, and then you can stake those LP tokens to earn Gnome tokens, and then you can go from being gifted a kit and then accepting every single query you get to being an LP and then staking those LP tokens to earn Gnome tokens and then owning part of the protocol. So it's, in my opinion, that's a true 0 to 1 innovation where you can just give someone something and then they can choose on their end, I'm going to accept every query, and then they can, by using DeFi and some of the other cool tools we've built in crypto, start owning part of the platform. I think that's pretty cool.
Yup. So we have Adrien. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, but go on, ask your question and tell me if I pronounced your name wrong.
It's Adrian.
Adrien.
So I'm sorry, I jumped in on this a little bit late. The person from Genomes.io, I missed your background, and I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about how you got involved with this project.
The person being Genome's intern or me, Aldo?
Oh, I don't. Sorry, I jumped in. I guess like midway.
Yeah, so I can say, so Aldo can maybe give an intro, and then one of the other co-founders, Mark, he's a geneticist. I think he has his PhD from, or Aldo, yeah, go ahead, give your and Mark's background. I think that'd be useful.
Yeah, so so Mark is a geneticist who has a PhD in stem cell biology from Imperial College in London. I met Mark at while I was working. We were both working for a big publisher. The publisher is called Macmillan, and they publish Nature. So I don't know. That's the biggest and most renowned scientific journal in the world, I guess. And they had also set up a corporate venture capital fund that invested in new technology ideas for researchers. I was working on the business end, so I was a bit of a consultant that knew the market very well. And Mark was a founder. He was one of the researchers that had a great idea building a company called Figshare. We worked together and we really grew Figshare together. And then at a certain point, I left to start my own company, which is an edtech company called TeachPitch. I started that in 2014. Both Figshare as TeachPitch did well. So we're both, it's growing in their respective markets. Mark and I stayed in touch. And in 2018, we co-founded Genomes DAO. Not only we, but also Chris, Simon, and Al. So 5 founders who basically started this initiative. Is that helpful?
Cool. Yeah. I checked out the Genetic Cats link. And I guess why I wanted to ask was because, but why I wanted to ask was it says that 23andMe and Ancestry run exome sequencing and that they sell your DNA to the highest bidder. I am a former scientist from 23andMe, and this is not accurate, but I do see that on your Genomes DAO website, you do say that it is genotyping, which is accurate. So I would love to work with whoever put that together just to make sure that this information is accurate.
I put it together, and then my background is in pharmacogenomics, so I've also worked in the industry as well. And I know, I mean, I've looked at the legal jargon on 23andMe and Ancestry's website. It's extremely obfuscated, and I'm not sure, like, yeah. So I guess the biggest question
true.
is that,
so 23andMe does require, I don't know about Ancestry, but 23andMe does require that you have to provide your consent for your data to be used in research. And that data is always anonymized when it is used in research. So your personal data is never going out to somebody.
How does one anonymize
so
DNA?
How did someone pay $300 million for
that's
data
a great
from...
That's a great question. They're not actually getting access directly to your DNA. They're getting access to, they ask the company to run queries, and then they get the de-anonymized or the anonymized data back. So right, I'd be happy to go into that off of this.
That'd be great.
No, and we'd be happy to. And you wouldn't be the first person that we've spoken to of 23andMe or Ancestry.com for that matter. And at a certain point, we also have to agree to disagree, because we understand that direct to consumer genetic companies, they have a certain point, they make a certain point, and we also make a certain point, right? So and we don't want to demonize anything or anyone. We just want to say we could do it in another way. Right. So
I think that's noble. I just, from somebody who has the industry perspective, I came to that and was like immediately kind of like, oh, that's not accurate, and would want to make sure that it gets presented.
So I was actually the one who wrote that, the rugging part. And then in my opinion, the rugging is more of a crypto term where you're getting, someone else has your DNA, and then they're selling it to someone else, and you're not getting compensated for that. So I guess in terms of the rugging aspect, that's true. But you're right. Maybe I can clean up the wording a little bit.
I'd be happy to chat with you if you have any questions about how that all works. I don't work there anymore. I'm not a company representative or anything like that. I just saw that and wanted to ask.
I also worked at one of the biggest pharmacogenomics companies but I'm not going to dox myself. But yeah, I see what you're saying, where I can clean up the wording a little bit to make it more accurate. Thanks for that suggestion.
Mm-hmm. And Aldo, it was great to hear your background and also to learn a little bit more about Mark. I'm definitely going to check out the DAO and try to learn a little bit more about what you guys are working on.
Yeah, join the DAO, and it's good to have, you know, we have loads of engaging conversations. Every Thursday we have a DAO meeting, and we have loads of discussions, and we really see it thrives by just bringing so many opinions and, you know, experience together. That's really what makes it grow, and I think that's also the strength of a DAO. Really, we really want it to be carried by the community, and we're happy to say we're now in the thousands of members. You know, and every day there's someone new joining with new ideas and a new perspective, which just only enriches, you know, the entire story. So you're more than welcome, Adrian. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. I'm looking at the site right now. I can take out the without your consent part. You technically, I guess, do have to consent, but then you're not compensated. So I'll clean
that is
up.
correct.
Thanks,
you're not compensated.
Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Thanks. I see. This is the best part about crypto, as it is now, right? Like, we can have difference of opinion, and, like, you know, it also gets resolved most of the times, and it's very cool. Thank you for pointing that out, and thank you for, like, you know, taking an action on changing that. So, like, you know, kudos to both of you, and thank you for coming up and asking this question. B, is there any last question from your side before we end the space?
Speaking of the DAO, you guys mentioned that if you hold GNOME tokens, you kind of own part of the DAO. So does it mean that the DAO does the DAO take a cut from these like queries?
So
and how
I
much?
think that's the ideal future. What we want. So as Aldo mentioned before, right? All the contracts with the Armenian Genomes Project or the Indigenous Peoples of Australia Project, and then the entity, the physical entity, those are registered under Genomes.io. And then that was when they were going through consensus. And then the other thing too is that DAOs hadn't really become a thing until like maybe middle of last year, right? Now DAOs are like, you know, everywhere. So that's kind of why we rebranded to the DAO. And then, yes, we do have the governance token. So I think Aldo is working on what the conversion looks like of transitioning like a meat space company to a DAO. But the thing is, if you go out to like any traditional like research organization, right? Or if you go to any university and you're like, hi, I'm like the anonymous intern account from Genomes DAO. And you're like, what the hell? Like, who are you? You know?
Yeah.
So there still likely needs to be a presence of like the Web2 meat space aspect of Genomes DAO, just for the sake of compliance purposes. But maybe Aldo can speak more on that front.
Yeah, so I mean, as I said before, we've embraced the DAO and the growth as a DAO, but we need to embrace it while we are also still limited in the United Kingdom. So we're currently a hybrid model, if you will. And why we, you know, at this point, why we want to remain hybrid is also because our commercial growth comes from, you know, working with universities, working with governments, whereby accountability, transparency, and compliance is very important, right? So, you know, and again, giving the example, you can't say I'm an anonymous intern, you know, do you want to sign a contract? That's just really not going to work. Having said that, we do like everything about the DAO, and we have a governance token indeed, which is GNOME, so people can buy into the DAO. And as we grow, we would like to bring that further together, right? So that's I think where we should leave it at this point, because it, you know, we've experienced it as being a journey, right? That you know, we're further embracing and we're further bringing together, but we do need to see also at the end of the day what makes our company grow, if that makes sense.
Makes total sense. So before we wrap up, what is the mint date that you guys have set for these NFTs?
February 28th.
And what actions do users need to take if they're interested in minting these NFTs?
Yeah, so I guess a few things on this front. Obviously, DAO members and like some parts are working with Zeneca as well. They're one of the he is one of the advisors to the project. So keep an eye on all the announcement channels in the Discord and then the Genomes DAO main account, because we're going to be having a few Twitter Spaces in the next week or two. And then we're also going to be doing some giveaways. So if you come to the Twitter Spaces, we'll maybe be giving you a free NFT, meaning a free kit, and then some whitelist spots, and then working with some of these other communities. So obviously, the platform works through Ether cards, so their community. But I guess the biggest thing is if you're interested in minting the cat and you want to make sure you get one for yourself and maybe someone else, join the Discord, keep an eye on the channel, and then you're going to be obviously hearing a lot more from the main account and hopefully more noise as, in the next 2 weeks.
That's awesome. That's awesome, right? So I think we are running short on time. I will just thank Genome Indian, B, Aldo, and all the speakers, Adrian, Gene NFT, and all the listeners who came and contributed here. Thank you for giving your time and listening to this spaces. Thank you guys for educating us about what you guys are doing in Web3 about genome sequencing and DNA sequencing, and trying to build a company which also helps users grow and participate and take ownership in a network. And also I personally see hopefully you go on to a model where you can fund these free sequencing in lower income areas, where people don't have to buy these kits, but they can still make money by contributing to scientific research and get paid for it. So that's quite interesting. I love the model you're using, both DeFi and NFT, to promote what you guys are doing. And yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak with you guys. And if you have any closing statements, where can people find you, how can they interact, that would be great to know.
I'm going to let intern tell you, give you all the details of where you can find out more about us. But I would just like to thank everyone for listening in, and thank you so much for hosting us, D and DMB. And keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting us. This was great. Thank you for everyone who came and stayed the whole time. There are some people who did that. Jeez. Yeah, hop in the Discord if you have questions, because this is not like, there's some aspects of this project that take a lot of explaining. It's not super easy to say, oh, this is how the vaults work, or this part's not on the blockchain, this is on the blockchain. And some of those questions can be kind of if you don't have a quick TLDR, it's kind of like, oh, this looks like vaporware or something like that. So I'd encourage you that if you're interested in the project and interested in getting involved, as we will need more bioinformaticians, different, folks from all different aspects of all different skill sets and everything, join the DAO. And then every Thursday we have a DAO meeting. It's not long. We just go over the updates. If people have questions about the project, things like that, if they want to talk to like Aldo or Mark or someone more technical, that's where you go to learn more. So just join the Discord. It's discord.gg /genomes. And then from there, just ask your questions and everything. We love, answering the questions and clarifying how the project works and things like that. So with that, thank you so much to everyone who came.
Awesome.
And have a wonderful rest of your day.
Awesome.
Thanks
Guys,
for the chat.
if you learned something, if you like this conversation, please follow me, please follow Genomes, P, Aldo, and all the people here. And if you learned anything on this Twitter Spaces, go and tweet saying, like, you learned this, you like this, you didn't like this, because that will help us get more people and more guests. So yeah, thank you. Before we end this space, thank you guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye bye.